guys, and welcome back to The Aspiring Home Cook. My name is Trisha, and in today's video I'm going to share with you how I make my powdered spices. Now I have an insane number of spices and spice powders, and while I do purchase a few of them ready from the store, there are some that I always prefer grinding up myself. It doesn't take very long, just a little bit of a roast and pop in the spice grinder, and you end up with the most beautiful, aromatic, fragrant and flavor-packed version of spice powders. Once you've tried making these spice powders at home, you'll never go back to the store-bought variety again. This also becomes a little more economical because, let me give you an example. If you're fond of Indian or even Mediterranean cooking, you will notice that there's a lot of cumin used in recipes. Now, some recipes call for the whole cumin seed to be used, the others call for a powdered version. It can get expensive to buy both variants of the spice. So by powdering some of your own spices, all you have to do is get the whole spice, and using that whole spice, you can actually make up a little batch of the spice powder without having to put in that money and buy an additional jar. So this really helps you stretch your budget and use up spices much quicker. You know that spices, especially the powdered spices, are at their best when they're freshly powdered or when they haven't been standing around for too long. Now with spices, the first thing that I like to do is toast them up just a little bit to waken up those fragrances, those oils and the aromas and the flavors in them. Today I'm going to be grinding two different spices, and I usually start off with the one that I know has a more subtle flavor and can commonly go across most dishes compared to others. Today I'm grinding up cumin seeds and coriander seeds. I know that cumin has a slightly more subtle flavor and goes in a lot more dishes and recipes than the coriander does. So I'm going to start off by toasting the cumin and then move on to the coriander. Now, if I was making pepper powder too, I would start with the pepper because, again, that's like a universal seasoning and you can literally use that in any recipe to bump up the flavors just a little bit. So hopefully that helps you decide which one to start off with. It just helps reducing the amount of cleaning required. For me, the best place to get spices is anywhere I can get them in bulk. You do get them in smaller packets at your local supermarkets, but I tend to pick up my spices in larger packs because I go through a lot of it. I tend to pick them up from my local Indian grocery store. It turns out to be more economical in the long run. Now, when you're powdering spices, make them in quantities that you will go through on a regular basis. So if you know that you're going to use just a little bit of cumin, maybe start off by roasting and grinding just a little bit. I've got a 1/4 cup in here. Now, while roasting, I like to make sure that I get a nice gentle heat going, and I'll probably put in a little bit more because I see that I've got a little vacant space in that pan and I go through a lot of cumin. I'm going to turn the heat on to medium and just lightly toast it. Don't leave this unattended because spices tend to burn really quickly. You want to make sure that you're moving things around, use a spatula, use a spoon, and just kind of roast them off till you can start getting that nice roasted spice aroma. You'll know as soon as you get there. You don't want a very dark color on the cumin because then it tends to burn really fast. And I'll show you when we reach the stage where I'm going to take it off the heat. You need to make sure that your pan is completely dry before you add the spices in there. Similarly, your little spice grinder, the spoons, the jars, everything that you're going to use to store your spices needs to be 100% dry. Any moisture in there will affect the spices and decrease the shelf life. My cumin has roasted. The seeds have changed color just a tiny bit, but I can smell the aromas out of the pan. Once the cumin is roasted, you can't just grind it just yet because this is fairly hot and will release a lot of heat even in that grinder. So I just spread it on a dry plate for it to come to room temperature. In the meanwhile, we can actually carry on roasting our coriander seeds or whatever other spices it is that you're roasting on a given day. Now for the coriander seeds, it's pretty much the same process. You pop your coriander seeds, that pan is already hot, so these will come to temperature a lot quicker. Just keep moving them around till they get nice and toasted. You might want to lower your heat at this stage because your pan's already hot. The coriander seeds roast off fairly quickly as well, so don't leave them unattended. The minute you start getting those aromas coming through, maybe give it a few seconds more. You don't want to discolor or darken the seeds too much from the color that it already is. And as soon as you hit that temperature, get it off the pan and onto a dry plate. My coriander seeds have roasted off really well, and I can see that they've just started developing color. So my heat goes off and the seeds come off the pan. Remember that the pan is also hot, so the longer you leave it in the pan, even after you take it off the heat, the darker your spices, or even if you're toasting nuts or whatever you might be cooking, the cooking process actually continues. I'm going to spread that into an even layer just so that it cools off faster. And we're going to leave these spices to cool down for a few minutes till they come down to room temperature. My spices have come down to room temperature. Now, since I'm going to be grinding multiple spices on the same day, my grinder needs to be completely dry before the spices go in, like we did with the roasting of the spices. I'm going to start off with the cumin. Pop the lid on and I'm going to grind this up. And after a little bit of grinding, you're going to be left with the most delicious smelling roasted cumin powder. You can use this in any recipe that calls for cumin powder. You can also use this to make a raita as a side for your Indian dishes. I'm going to be sharing a couple of raita recipes really soon, so watch out for that. And now all that's left to do is just transfer all of your powder into a dry container. I prefer keeping my spice powders in these little glass jars from IKEA. They're airtight and they hold flavor really well. One last thing for you to remember is once you transfer the ingredients in there, please don't put the lid on immediately. Wait for it to cool down because there will be a little bit of heat generated in that little spice grinder. So once everything has completely cooled down, it shouldn't take too long, but when everything is completely cooled down, only then pop the lid on and store it. You can use your spice powders immediately if you need to. That's my ground cumin powder ready for use. I'm just going to set this aside, and using the same spice grinder, I'm going to grind my coriander seeds down. And just like that, within moments, all the hard work's done in your little spice grinder. And that's my coriander powder ready to go. And guys, that's how I make my spice powders at home. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you really soon with another delicious recipe. So till then, take care. Bye.